There's a lake in Africa that's disappearing. And when it's gone, 40 million people will have nothing left. But there's a plan. A massive, almost unbelievable plan. A canal so big it would cut across an entire continent. 2,400 kilometers, $50 billion, and it might be the only thing that can stop what's coming. Let me show you why this matters more than you think. Lake Chad sits on the edge of the Sahara Desert, where 4 countries meet: Chad, Cameroon, Nigeria, and Niger. In 1963, it covered about 25,000 square kilometers. Today, around 2,000. Some measurements say even less, 1,350 square kilometers. That's a 90% loss. 90%. Gone. And here's what that actually means. 40 million people live around this lake. Most of them fish, farm, or raise animals. When the water disappeared, their entire way of life disappeared with it. The shores dried up, communities collapsed, people were forced to migrate, and in that chaos, armed groups moved in. Boko Haram, Islamic State factions. They filled the vacuum. The water crisis didn't create the violence, but it made it so much worse. Now, engineers have a solution. And it's so massive it sounds like science fiction. They want to build a canal. Not just any canal, a canal that stretches from the Congo River, the second largest river in the world by water volume, all the way to Lake Chad, 2,400 kilometers through the heart of Africa. The project is called Transaqua, and it's been sitting on paper since the 1980s. Here's how it would work. The Congo River pumps out about 41,000 cubic meters of water every single second. That's an unimaginable amount. The plan is to take a small fraction of that, just a few percent, and channel it north, through dams, through canals, across the Central African Republic, until it reaches the Chari River, which feeds into Lake Chad. If you're watching this and thinking this sounds fascinating, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Only if you want more videos like this. It helps this reach people who actually care about stuff like this. Alright, back to the canal. So why hasn't this been built yet? If the problem is so bad and the solution exists, what's stopping it? 3 things: money, politics, and the environment. Let's start with money. $50 billion. That's the estimate. In today's money, that's about 258 billion Brazilian reais. That's not just expensive, that's reshape a continent expensive. For comparison, the Suez Canal, one of the most important waterways on Earth, cost a fraction of that when adjusted for today's dollars. Transaqua would be one of the most expensive infrastructure projects in human history. But here's the thing, the people behind it say it's not just a canal. It's an economic corridor. They're promising tens of thousands of square kilometers of irrigated farmland, massive hydroelectric dams generating power for millions, a navigable waterway connecting landlocked countries in Central Africa to the Atlantic Ocean. Jobs, stability, development, all of it built along this single artery of water. And that's the pitch. This isn't just about saving a lake, it's about transforming an entire region. 8 countries support it. Nigeria has been one of the loudest voices pushing for it, especially under former President Muhammadu Buhari. China is involved too. Power China, a massive state-owned company, signed a memorandum with the Lake Chad Basin Commission back in 2016. 2 years later, in 2018. The Commission officially endorsed Transaqua and signed an agreement with Italy, where the project was originally designed by a company called Bonifica in the 1980s. So you've got political backing, you've got Chinese engineering and financing interest. You've got a desperate need. What's the problem? The Democratic Republic of the Congo. That's the problem. Most of the canal would run through Congolese territory, or through the Central African Republic, which borders it. And the DRC has never agreed to this. Not once. They say they've been left out of the decision-making process. And here's the kicker. 3/4 of the Congolese population doesn't have access to clean drinking water. So imagine being told that your river, your water, is going to be redirected north to help your neighbors, while your own people are thirsty. That's not just politics. That's sovereignty. That's survival. And it gets more complicated. Even if the DRC agreed, there's the environmental question. The Congo Basin is one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. It's a massive rainforest ecosystem. Scientists, especially in France, have warned that diverting even a fraction of the Congo's water could cause irreversible damage. We're talking about an ecosystem that supports millions of species. Many we haven't even discovered yet. Mess with the water flow, and you could collapse the whole thing. So now you're weighing 40 million people who need water against an entire ecosystem that the world depends on. That's not an easy choice. But wait, there's more. Because engineers know the $50 billion version is a tough sell. They've come up with cheaper alternatives. One idea uses the Ubangi River, a tributary of the Congo, with pumping stations to move the water. Another version taps into the Koto River at a high elevation in the Central African Republic and uses gravity to move water north. Both of these would cost a fraction of the original price. But here's the thing, none of them have been built either, because the moment water crosses a border, engineering stops being the issue, governance becomes the issue, sovereignty becomes the issue. Who controls the water? Who benefits? Who loses? Let me put this in perspective for you. Lake Chad is fed by two rivers, the Chari and the Logone. Together, they account for 95% of the water flowing into the lake. But rainfall has dropped. Climate change has made things worse, and people are using more water than ever before. The result? The lake is dying. And when a lake dies in a place like the Sahel, people don't just move, they flee. By October 2025, nearly 4 million people in the Sahel were displaced, not just by drought, by conflict, by hunger, by all of it at once. This is why Transaqua keeps coming back, because the alternative is collapse, and collapse in a region this fragile doesn't stay contained. It spills over, it creates refugees, it fuels extremism, it destabilizes entire countries. So the idea of Transaqua isn't just about water, it's about security, it's about preventing a humanitarian disaster that could ripple across Africa and beyond. But after decades of talk, the canal is still just a line on a map. Here's what's wild. The idea of moving Congo water to Lake Chad isn't even new. Engineers were talking about it as far back as 1929, almost 100 years ago, and it still hasn't happened. Why? Because projects like this require something incredibly rare. They require countries to agree, to trust each other, to share resources, and in a region where borders were drawn by colonial powers, where resources have always been fought over. That kind of cooperation is almost impossible. And yet, the need is real, the crisis is real, the people suffering are real. So what happens next? Right now, Transaqua exists in a kind of limbo. It has support, it has designs, it even has potential funding from China, but it doesn't have the one thing it absolutely needs: consensus. Without the DRC on board, it's not happening. Without addressing the environmental concerns, it's not happening. And without a way to make $50 billion seem worth it to the people writing the checks, it's not happening. But cheaper versions might. Smaller projects, pilot programs, something that proves the concept without betting everything on one massive canal. Because the truth is, Lake Chad is still shrinking. The people are still desperate. And the clock is still ticking. Transaqua is one of the most ambitious ideas ever proposed for Africa. It's bold, it's massive, and it's stuck. Stuck between what's needed and what's possible. Between engineering and politics. Between hope and reality. But here's the thing you need to understand. Whether or not this canal ever gets built, the crisis it's trying to solve isn't going away. 40 million people are watching the water disappear, and they're running out of time. That's the real story, not just a canal, but what happens when the water runs out and no one can agree on how to bring it back.